This video is going to be kind of a mess, I'm just warning you now. Hey you guys, welcome back to Cinematic Headspace. So, I was originally not going to review this movie. It's one of those movies that everyone has reviewed. JonTron, Nostalgia Critic, Phelan Porteous, Alison Pregler, and Cinema Snob made an hour-long two-part review together that was hilarious. And then I watched this movie. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to make a review, it's going to be the best review I've ever done. I'm pulling out all the stops. Perfect audio, well, as perfect as I can. Perfect camera, subtitles, even a few moments from other reviews, which will be linked in the description if you ever want to check those out. Let's do this. But first, a little background. And now, for the comprehensive history of Food Fight.
Food Fight is a film made by Threshold Entertainment about popular food icons living together in a fictional world within a grocery store. Lawrence Kasanoff, the owner of Threshold, declared it the next Pixar, and a whole bunch of merchandise tie-ins were planned, such as online shorts, storybooks, toys, even a Food Fight on Ice show. Can't believe this works, just like my mouth. Anyway, a bunch of sponsors were attached, such as Kellogg's, Keebler Cookies, Georgia Pacific, Coca-Cola, the list goes on and on. Here's where the problem started. The film was intended to be animated in a squash and stretch style. Think of a 3D Looney Tunes movie. Kasanoff used to be a partner of James Cameron and an owner of the Mortal Kombat franchise. He's even listed as a producer of the movie that came out a few months ago on IMDb. Most of his stuff is live action. While making Food Fight, he didn't understand how animation worked. He would order retakes and give directions such as, make it more awesome. The movie was set to be released in 2002, but the hard drives containing the original animation were stolen. This prompted the animators to finish the film with motion capture technology. Motion capture animation doesn't have the best reputation in the film industry. The idea behind it is to give the characters more realistic movements, but instead it gives them some soulless eyes while restricting the actors' movements. Don't get me wrong, it's been used to make some good stuff like the Polar Express and the Adventures of Tintin, but it's not as pretty as other forms of animation. Anyway, in addition to the drawbacks of motion capture mentioned previously, the main reason for the lackluster animation was the limitations of the animation software being used to make the film. It would be over a decade before the film would be released. Along the way, many of the sponsors would drop out of the film. Speculation leads many to believe that this would be due to the fact that many of these sponsors didn't appreciate their mascots being the butts of extremely crude jokes, but more on that later. Threshold also kept losing money, so they had to keep borrowing money from other companies, even auctioning the film off at one point. This led the film to costing $65 million. Yes, you heard that right. This movie, Food Fight, cost $65 million altogether. After several failed release dates, the movie finally came out in 2013. It made barely any of its budget back and is the first film to receive a negative rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Alright, now that that's out of the way.
By the way, this was my face while watching this movie. No joke. So this movie starts off with Marketropolis Market turning into the Food Fight world. Then we see the main character of this thing, Dexter Detective, rescuing kittens from a throwaway villain called Fat Cat Burglar, who is a rat because of course he is. Dex saves the day and meets up with his sidekick, Daredevil Dan. Throughout the movie, Dan is super annoying and does nothing but make bad jokes and cause accidents. I don't know what the point of his character is. He doesn't help or move the movie plot that much. Anyway, Dan tells Dex that he's going to propose to his girlfriend, Sunshine Goodness, and Dan cries poop. We meet Sunshine Goodness. She's playing with some little Ikes. See? Because they're icons. It's so clever, right? And then goes off to have dinner with Dex. Dex is about to propose to her when Sunshine has to go check on Dan after he has an accident. Isn't she precious? But then Sunshine completely disappears and is never seen again. 6 months later, the market is visited by... Holy cow, what is that?
Must be Leonard, the manager.
So Nostalgia Critic came up with a better joke than I ever could about this scene, and I tried. So I thought, I'll just use his.
Would you trust a guy if he was selling something and looked and acted like this?
Good evening, madam. Can I interest you in my product? It's called Evil Poison Bites Death.
I'm sorry, that doesn't seem like a product I'd be interested in.
Oh, come now. It'll provide your business with the wholesome, attractive image of Satan's that it so desperately needs.
I'm going to knee you in the crotch if you don't leave right now.
That's just what the Jehovah's Witness said. Be honest, I came on too strong, didn't I?
So Christopher Lloyd here brings in new Brand X products, which apparently means that he can take over the store. He goes to make space for his products and commits a gruesome murder.
It's a perfectly good bag of chips. Survival of the fittest.
So, Phyllis, Allison Pregler, and Cinema Snob came up with a better joke for this than I ever could, so I thought I'll just use theirs.
Survival of the fittest, Leonard.
That bag of chips was my only child!
Get a life, Leonard. Never opened. Never enjoyed.
Dude, seriously, get out of your store. There's more to life than a bag of chips.
My life was never the same after that day. The joy was gone. I tried to think of reasons to get up in the morning. All I could think of was that bag of chips.
Never opened. Never enjoyed.
Back in Food Fight Land, because it's suddenly night, I guess, Dex visits his nightclub called the Copa Banana that he opened after quitting his job as a detective. A breaks out, and then we see these cold, soulless eyes of Lady X, the Brand X mascot or something, who wants to get friendly with Dex. But after an interrogation from the chip pirate and the fight ends, she leaves with Dan instead. Brand X continues to mess with the store, Lady X keeps pursuing Dex, and Ike World begins having some mysterious deaths. Apparently the death of an Ike destroys a product. No, it doesn't make sense to me either. Dex is forced to get back into the detective game that he only quit a few months ago, and decides to sneak into Lady X's lair, home. They dance, because why not? While dancing, they knock over a bunch of Lady X's stuff. Great. And Lady X knocks him out. She could have done that a lot sooner, but I guess she'd really been itching to knock over some things. Dex and Dan wake up and narrowly escape. They go to get help from...
Want to know what is going on? So, Brand X! Oh, why me? Why Brand X? Why? No, come on. Why not, let's see, Dr. Pepper, Dr. Scholl's, Dr.
Why do I do this to myself? So while Dan does a backstroke, Dex and Scary Nose Doctor make a plan to hack into the store's main computer and have Brand X recalled. Problem is...
It's daytime!
So Dex and Dan will have to be careful. They escape Icon Land and run into... oh my gosh.
No, Larry, I am not buying that for you! Miss me?
Anyway, they reach the computer. Somehow Leonard doesn't notice a squirrel and a dog flying on a soda into his office, and they meet...
How can I help? Upload? Download? Scan?
Can you bring up a form?
So let me get this straight. Ikes are food icons and computer people? This movie is about a world of popular food icons and interpreted dancing blue Siri voices. Just kidding. We're far from done here. They also run into the Count Chocula mockery at some point. I don't know why. He doesn't help them or do anything. He pretty much just sexually harasses Dan for the rest of the movie. I'm not kidding. That is seriously what he does. So Dex finds out that apparently Brand X recalled Sunshine Goodness's raisins as well as another product, Priscilla Pusley's prunes. I'm pretty sure a company can't recall another company's product, but what do I know? I decided to watch this movie, so how smart can I be?
That's impossible. Sunshine and Priscilla had different manufacturers.
Excellent question, Dex. How does that work? Who knows? Somehow they all escape from the office after being locked in by Lady X's henchmen. We don't know how. Dex enters his club as Brand X is trying to brainwash the remaining Ikes with a song. He gets them to fight back by singing the French national anthem. Dex then rallies them into starting a rebellion, and the next begins. Now, it sounds like we're a good ways through the movie. We've had the beginning, the mystery, the twist, which was obvious, and now we're at the climax of the film. The thing is, the movie is only around halfway over. I know, right? The battle scene pretty much consumes the remaining half an hour of the film, which is both terrible because the pacing is crap, but also good because there's no more mismatched puzzle pieces of a plot trying to happen. Let's fast forward to the next plot point. So Dan and Dex have the chance to go into Brand X HQ and save Sunshine. Trying to have a character arc, Dex has a "but what if I can't do it" moment. Dan gives him a pep talk and Dex is like, "You're right, let's go." Sure enough, Sunshine is somehow alive and well. Dex uses the power of plot convenience to rescue her. She's blind. Then, the clipboard guy makes his way into Ikepalooza. How? Who knows? Can he just do that? I guess. Does it make sense? Probably not, but here we are. Then we find out that, surprise, surprise, it was Lady X all along. Ding. She then tells Dex that she used to be Priscilla Pusley, but she got that Brazilian plastic surgery so that she could be hot enough to get revenge for her
Perfectly good boxes of prunes. Never enjoyed.
She took Sunshine to steal her essence, no, we don't know what that is, in order to create Brand X and take over the market. Yes. The plot of this movie boils down to a rivalry between raisins and prunes. How amazing. Sunshine kicks her butt, she goes back to being ugly. Everything ends happy and this movie is over, done, finished, roll credits. There were actually secret endings. They're dumb. The only humor in this movie, of which there is too much, comes in two categories: food puns and innuendos. When I say food puns, I mean every single food pun you've ever made in your life, even the ones you made when you were 4 and didn't understand comedy. Yeah, they're in this movie.
Okay, 4 carrots! You kept this place running smooth as a smoothie.
Better go easy on the potato juice before you get chip-faced. Stan, I don't know if I can cut the mustard anymore. Snap, crackle, and pop out of here.
As for the innuendos, I know that at this point I'm like the millionth person to say this, but for a kid's film, yes, this movie is a kid's film. This movie has way too many sexually crude jokes. They are so uncomfortable that I don't think they would pass if the movie had been aimed at adults. I had to sit there and so, no, you're gonna sit there.
Perhaps you desire a companion for those lonely bachelor nights. Then here's good news. I am the weasel for you.
And she's got a real sweet tooth with chocolate. Oh, baby. Who's your sugar daddy?
What can I say? Chicks dig chocolate.
Dan's your man. Melts in your mouth, not in your hand.
I can't help you. You already eat through to his hollow center?
I haven't shown you my secret ingredient.
Lots of fun. More fun than a spanking.
Oh, but being filthy can be loads of fun.
There are some stains you can never wash out.
I want to scrub your bubbles, Tex.
Is that the Tyson Centrifugal Creamy chocolate? You chocolate? That is so sweet. Do you work out? I use the Flanagan. Hey, back off! Are you on my back? Not that I mind that. Well, this isn't very much fun, is it? I think I just wet myself. Are those melons real?
Normally, the characters are my favorite part of my reviews, but today, not really. The characters are practically non-existent. Most of them don't add anything to the story or affect anything whatsoever. The only characters we're talking about are Dex and Lady X. Both are not well written. Dex is completely inconsistent. He's set up to be this expert detective who is deeply in love with Sunshine, but after 6 months of looking, he had quit his job and opened up a super popular nightclub, so how hard did he really look? He can't figure out obvious answers to questions like, how did Mr. Clipboard know someone trashed the place? And, is Lady X a good guy or a bad guy? Duh. He also drops this.
And I thought the raisins were humiliating.
True love. Lady X is just as problematic a character. My biggest issue with her, besides the fact that every scene with her is uncomfortably sexual, is that her whole plan doesn't make any sense. She basically wants revenge for her prunes not being popular, which is the public's fault, not the store's or Sunshine's. She basically wants revenge against people who aren't responsible for her problems. She also claims to be in love with Dex, never mind the bestiality problem in this movie. But she tries to kill him multiple times, so yeah, right. I wish I had more to say, but this movie gave me nothing. Apparently $65 million wasn't enough to buy interesting characters. The thing that really surprises me about Food Fight is not the budget or the animation, although it comes close, but just how arrogant it is. It'd be one thing if this was a movie made by a silly ripoff company, but this was an established Hollywood producer who wanted to compete with Pixar. Knowing that makes me feel like this movie should have at least been passable, but it was, well, this. I mean, Lawrence Kasanoff really just thought that he could make an animated film, stretch and stretch style, motion capture, whatever, without actually knowing anything about animation, and that just like it would all work out. Like who does that? Okay, I'm sure he's an intelligent man, that he's great with film most of the time, that this was a moment of weakness or something for him. It still feels kind of off that someone would make plans like that, you know? The only compliments I can give this thing is that I think Charlie Sheen and Eva Longoria's voice acting was alright. They pulled through a little despite the script having all those food puns. The soundtrack was also okay. Not good, but not bad either. I wish I could say the same for everything else. I give this a 1 out of 10. Best I can do. Sorry. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to hit that like, subscribe button, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!